Так, 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 так. And what starts? Oop. Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, we tried. Let's go and see if it's actually working.
Alright, okay.
Okay, we're on.
We are on.
Alright, today is the 3rd of December 2022. We're here with my friend. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Vasily. Hello.
Okay, today we're going to talk about. I hope you can all hear us. It shows for us that it's quite a good sound. But today we're going to talk about the situation like around Ukraine and Moldova. They're our neighbors. And we had quite a few jokes about each other.
Yeah, true. I mean, after all, we are one of the only neighbors, I would say. I mean, for Romania and Moldova, Ukraine is one of the few neighbors that we didn't fight with. I mean, I don't know, like since the times of Cossacks or something, you know, the raids, the mutual raids, etc. But like historically speaking, there were like almost no conflicts, like nothing between those countries. Maybe the only exception was like the First World War for a really small period of time, but besides that, nothing.
I have to apologize straight away. My nose is a bit running. I've got a bloody cold. Doesn't work very well, but my son's still here. So it's not COVID or anything else like
it's
this. But the way why we're going to talk about this, and I'm going to play a little bit of the recording I've done in the beginning of 2021, and I'm going to switch off the mic of my camera for a second. Right. Okay, let's see how it's done. I hope it's like this. In the next 10 years, what we will see is a fall of Russia. Right? So, again, this is something to look out for because at the moment they don't really have another leader that is going to be able to take over the country. Maybe they have somebody who's hidden in there, but what we really see is a complete the disaster in the so-called elites of Russia. They simply continue falling further and further and further and further. Anyway, I'm going to switch this off because I'm not sure how the sound is going on the video.
No, I see.
So, but the whole thing is like, that was 2021.
Yep.
Right? And the ideas came to me way before that. Like, right, and I already made a video where I talked about how the Russians going to fall, you know, how it's actually going to happen, which area is going to end up. Like I was saying that part of the area is going to go to China, but some area is going to actually end up kind of levitating more towards Japan because they do have a lot of like. So if you look at the eastern side of Russia,
Yeah.
there's areas which have close business ties with Mongolia, for example.
And not only business. I mean, Republika Tver wasn't part of Russia until '44, I guess.
Something like this, yeah.
But they're Mongolians, basically.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. There's like areas in there which are close to Mongolia. There's areas where there's more Chinese people, even now,
Yep.
than the Russians, which is like ridiculous. Then there's also like the areas which is like Vladivostok. This is where my father went to university, for example. And those areas, they have cars. They have more Japanese cars with like
Yep.
the steering wheel on the right hand side than the European cars because they import their cars. They have lots of again like small business connections. So like the fish, they sell their fish to Japan.
Yep.
So there's a lot of that, and many of those areas they have almost zero connection with Moscow. except for the fact that Moscow takes away most of the taxes
True.
from these areas, and that these taxes go to Moscow, and then a little bit of those taxes go back to the local people.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And I'm thinking what like the only thing that was keeping the entire system. Okay, like in Soviet Union, it was separate from the entire world. A system that was like closed on itself, right? So it would kind of make sense, all this connection between Vladivostok, for example, and Moscow, right? But now, like you have this two huge giants, China, economical giants, China and Japan, and well, actually the economics is the one that is always saying the last word. So basically, why would you trade with Moscow? Why would you ever like deal with Moscow in terms of business, etc.? If you just have well partners that are much more
Right
skillful
here.
and right here and don't rob you. I mean, they do,
Oh.
but not on the scale that the oligarchs in Moscow with their connections to the FSB, etc., could do to you. Basically, any Chinese or like Japanese investor or like partner would be much less dangerous for you than a guy from Moscow.
You know, you said that. About 2005, I was talking to my uncle, right? And I was one of the people who persuaded the elites of the Kherson region
Mm-hmm.
to move away from, you remember ЕЭП?
The
Единое экономическое пространство?
right. The common economic area,
Yeah.
like this project of Russia.
Yeah. So the elites of my home city, elites of Kherson,
Mm-hmm.
most of them wanted to join that.
Okay.
Right, and I was talking to my uncle. He was like one of the business people. People from Kherson might know him because he was the owner of the sport club called Olymp,
Okay.
and he was director of a Belinsky market.
Mm-hmm.
He had a few other little businesses here and there, so he wasn't like in big business, but like, you know, people kind of recognize him. And we were talking to him, and I was like, Uncle, why the fuck do you want to go to Russia?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, yeah, but you know, we have this kind of old, this history together. I was like, Uncle, these guys are fucking their own people. What do you think is gonna happen when they come here?
Yep.
Right, you know, it's like, and like, the conversation went, I was like, look, Uncle, imagine you're like in your 50s. He was like, I said, okay, imagine you have to go. Something happens and you have to go to a hospital. Right? And what you will find is that many hospitals cannot deal with a lot of things in Ukraine and Russia. And quite often it's because they don't have the right equipment.
Yep.
Right? Not that the doctors are less professional. If you're willing to pay the Ukrainian doctors at the time. They were as good and sometimes even better than the doctors in the West. But if you have to have this machine to get these done,
Yep.
if you have to have these medicines to get these things done, what you will find is that they just don't have it.
Yep.
And if you need to have the connection with Europe, because if anything happens and you have to go to the doctor, you want to be able to get up and go to see a doctor, right? Because many people in Ukraine, they had money, right? You know, they were slowly building up, and this is what you get a lot from Ukrainians now. They come to Europe and they go like, wait a minute. All of a sudden, you know, Ukraine doesn't seem like such bad place to live.
Yeah, there are some differences.
There are differences, yeah. I mean, there are like, you know, legitimately great stuff, bad stuff, but like, you know, and they go like, well, actually, a lot of things that are being built in Ukraine now well, were being built before Russians started invasion, they were actually more advanced than the ones in Europe, because they were essentially building on European experience. So the things that they're happening in Europe now, Ukrainians were already using the benefit of the experience that Europeans have had.
Yes, I mean in terms of indeed the DIA, you know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. Basically, it's an e-government app that every Ukrainian has, which is amazing. I mean, in terms of how it works, it was considered before that Estonia was like the first country to introduce e-government on such a level, but here you have an app that basically contains all your documents. You can pay your taxes, you can declare your taxes, you can do, I don't know, appointments to the doctors as well.
I'm not sure. Like, I have not lived in Ukraine since God knows how many years, but
As far as I know, yes. Like this, like all the administrative stuff, all your connections with the state basically goes through one single app. Think about this and compare this to Germany, for example, where we are right now, with a shit ton of letters, etc. So basically, the thing is that, like, the technologies matter, and they matter a lot, and it's the fact that actually, well, we can't argue against this, right? That technology is something that influences our life every single day. And here, speaking back about Russia, Moscow has nothing to give to this Vladivostok, nothing to give to this, I don't know, Khabarovsk, which is on the border with China. It's basically, they are telling you, look, we have a bit of money and we have the power. We basically have the monopoly on violence, so we can come to your like Vladivostok. We can fire your governor or just take him to the prison, which happened not in Vladivostok, in Khabarovsk. Khabarovsk. They just jailed the guy who was elected by the people. They went on the streets, on the protests, and it ended with nothing. And Moscow just sent their guy from Moscow to govern this region. I mean, no elections, no nothing. It just was, yeah, finito.
yeah, and this way, what I was talking about in this video is like they don't have the leadership. They have nothing to offer.
Yep.
Right, and it's gonna fall apart. And this is in this video, I actually talk about the fact that the last ditch attempt before Russia goes to shit is attack against Ukraine.
Yep.
Like in this particular one here, like I'm just playing.
Okay.
I actually said, like it's about 10-minute piece. I'm not gonna play here, but I said like the last ditch attempt. I wasn't sure if it's gonna be a full-on invasion or whether it's gonna. But I said, look, it's gonna be something really aggressive, probably using insurgency groups, some sort of attack to just unite people around Russia. And throughout the 2021, one of the things I was actually saying with some friends from Russia, I was saying that the more we stayed, especially like what happened in Khabarovsk, after that I was like, guys, the war is inevitable and this is going to be an all-out war because of what happened in Khabarovsk. And I said, look, but one thing that happened is nobody expected Russians to attack in February. Like, the reason why nobody expected it is because they've done the same thing Nazis have done. Yeah, they've done the same thing. So, and Nazis have done it a few times actually. So, for example, the first country Nazis have attacked, I think, was Czech Republic.
It wasn't a net. I mean, yeah, they occupied the Sudetenland.
And the way they've attacked Czech Republic was very kind of same. They didn't have the force.
Mm-hmm.
On the paper, as far as I remember, the Czech Republic army was actually stronger than the Nazi army.
Indeed. Yep.
But because they were spread out through such a wide front, because the Nazis said they broke through the front and literally went in without really properly announcing the war, then they've done something similar to Poland, right? They used the false flag attack.
Yep.
And then went in straight away. The Polish army was quite strong as well on those times, but they were not prepared for the type of war the Germans were running. And the last people they've done it to were the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And in the Soviet Union, actually, the way they've done it, they did not declare a war at all. Same way that Putin did. There was no, he just said we're attacking, but there was no official like, hey, here's a letter, we're declaring you a war.
I think this the part of the war, what, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't even remember a specific country that would declare war in terms of international right. So the thing.
Yeah. For example, if you take the U.S., the first U.S. War with Iraq,
Yeah.
they said, look, they would call the ambassador in, and they say, here's a note, right? If you did this, this, and this, if you do not fuck off, we're gonna attack.
Yeah.
And you give it a time.
Yeah. So the
Same as take Libya, take Syria. Like, every time it would be like, hey guys, you can't shoot at the civilians, right? This is a reason for our war. You shooting cannons at civilians.
Yeah.
You call an ambassador. You have an official thing and saying, hey, if you don't stop, we're gonna bomb the living shit out of you.
Yeah.
Right? So there was no enunciation of war from the Russians.
There was, correct me if I'm wrong, was there like a kind of ultimatum or something? I mean, all this.
No, there was no enunciation of war in 2014. So when they invaded, when they invaded Crimea, there was no, like, there was.
Yeah, that's obvious.
There was ambassador of Ukraine in Moscow. Nothing.
I mean, recently, like in 2022, they had like some aberrations about NATO, etc. before the war. Or
Yeah,
after
but
the war.
they have never, like, there was a working commission on the about eastern Ukraine. They could have said, look, if you don't do this,
We do
on
that.
the 24th we attack.
Mhm.
There was no ultimatums, nothing.
All right, right. Because look, I don't know exactly these things, because to me they are all aberrations. Doesn't matter, like, it's all bullshit anyway. But it was interesting, like, from the point of, like, the law. I know that they didn't declare war. That's obvious, because it's a, like, special military operation. Or
Yeah, it's
stuff.
an invasion. Yeah.
Exactly, but they didn't give a proper written ultimatum. This is the important.
To the best of our knowledge, to the things that were happening, like,
No.
I quite often look the videos of Arestovich. He was part of the group that was taking part in the talks.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing. Right. But yeah, the difference with the Nazi Germany, like, I'm thinking, is that also. Well, Germany wasn't on. It was rolling, it was like on steroids. After Poland, like Czechoslovakia, then Poland, etc., it was on steroids more and more. Russia, on the other
And
hand,
know what was the excuse the Germans have used for their defense, to defend their attack on Soviet Union?
no idea.
In the Nuremberg trials, there were two types of Germans, right? The ones that got hung and the ones who went to jail.
Yeah.
Right? The ones that got hung, the people who got the death penalty, right? Well, most of them got the death penalty because the Soviet Union said we want them to be like, we want them to hang.
Yeah.
And all of them were saying that before, the reason they attacked Soviet Union is because their groups, it just does that. They had pictures and stuff like this of Soviet troops getting ready to attack.
Yeah, I've heard about this, but nevertheless, I mean, the difference in terms of like, we are taking two totalitarian.
Yeah, but
fashion.
the same excuses being used by
By
Putin
Yes.
and his clique to justify their attack against Ukraine. Ukraine was going to attack us. This was going to be done by NATO. The NATO was making Ukraine attack Russia. Like, not the part where, look, we invaded your country, we captured your land. It was like, we displaced millions of your citizens.
Because
it was all the NATO's fault that Ukraine wanted to attack Russia.
yeah, absolutely. But what I wanted to come back to the difference between the Nazi Germany and Russia, not in terms of ideology. Like if we take out the racism, this like scientific racism towards like the Untermenschen, and so on. Basically, it's the same ideology, more or less with some asterisks. But the difference is that Nazi Germany at the time was on steroids. It was like winning. The sentiment inside Germany was like, oh my God, we are taking back the land, etc. But in Russia, I mean, okay, there was Crimea, there was like
Syria, there was Georgia.
Okay, and so basically they had the same sentiment, because for me it looks like in 2020, for example 2021, it was quite obvious that it was a downside, that things will be going down for Putin from that point, and it was like a general feeling. Everyone more or less felt it.
Yeah, the thing for that was they needed a small victorious war.
Yeah, the small victorious war, which is like it's a theme, and
then this is why they were like at the beginning of the when the Russians just invaded Ukraine in 2014. I was in the meeting with a British journalist who just came back from Ukraine, and he was meeting with that friend. Went there. It was in London. I was still living in England, and I went there with a friend of mine. She's kind of a very good singer. She sings very nice Ukrainian songs in Ukrainian, like on the what's it called? This thing on Spotify. You can actually find her, and the name says Sweet, and but it's kind of Sweet, and she's very nice singer. But she was like, look, there's this meeting, do you want to come along? And as I came along, and something I pointed out back then is like this small victorious war. It actually goes very much along the lines of the Russians trying to piss off Japan at the beginning of the 20th century.
Yeah, exactly.
And so similar action. So like I say, there's a lot of stuff that happens there. But to come back to our original talk where we're talking where the thing's gonna go for Russia, like the many areas of Russia, like we pointed out, they have very little economic connections with Moscow already. And now Moscow, they were losing control last summer. And personally, so 21, I was saying, look, personally, I thought that they would only attack after the summer of 2022. Because this is like the summer of 2022. I knew there would be more people getting upset with things like we see now. There's this forest fires that happened in Russia, which nobody reported on. People but now they kind of covering everybody because they have this war and everybody has to unite. And I thought they're going to use that after summer of 2022 because I knew things are going bad. And this is why Ukraine and Moldova were like, hey, we don't want to deal with you anymore, for a very long time, or kind of going our own way.
True. Well, Moldova is a special case. It was interesting always to talk with people from Ukraine and to make these parallels with Moldova, because I'll go really brief into the history, but basically right after we declared our independence, even before in 1989, there was this thing called Transnistria, which wasn't an autonomous region or something. It's just a place mostly populated by well, Russian speakers, but especially it wasn't the problem the Russian speakers, like the Ukrainians, even the Russians that live there, etc. Because it was like 1/3 Moldavians, 1/3 Ukrainians, 1/3 Russians. The problem was the Soviet veterans, which were like in quite a huge number. I mean, we are talking thousands of people who received an apartment, or a dacha in the sunny Moldova, Solnchna Moldova. This is what was actually happening there. And yeah, basically, right on the beginning of our independence, and especially after we've been admitted into UN, like on the day when we were admitted into UN, on the 2nd of March 91, the war started with Transnistria. So we had our Donbass way back then, like 30 years ago. And well, we had this war. It lasted like for 4 or 5 months, more like the active phase. And basically we lost it. We lost it because we were fighting from the beginning with the separatists, with these odd groups of Kazakhs, volunteers. Gherkin was actually participating there, yes. And also a few freaks, I'm sorry, from the UNSO. I don't know what they were doing. Basically, everyone who lived to this day, they just denounced this. Like they said, look, it was a mistake. We shouldn't. It was a mistake that we went to Moldova, etc. But like the core were hardcore Russian nationalists who went to Transnistria, exactly Donbass, basically Donbass thing. Then we had this 10 years of economic turmoil, Donbass, etc. And basically all this urge for independence, for getting as far away from Russia, etc., it died out. It died out for a period of time, and then in 2001, I guess, 2001, the Party of Communists in Moldova, this is how it's called, like the proper translation, not the Communist Party, remember, the Party of Communists, right? And they received the power, they took the power in elections, and for 9 years we had this guy called Vladimir Voronin, which was the president of Moldova, and virtually he slowly but surely started grabbing the power in the country, like to a level that in 2009 was comparable to Lukashenko, for example. Like the way the country was run, the corruption, this old Soviet fetishization, the victory days, etc. So basically all the stuff. And the last thing that he was planning to do was to federalize Moldova. He was against this plan because he really wanted the power for himself, not because he didn't want to split Moldova into a federation, which is a small country, but we have an autonomous region in the south called Gagauzia. We also have this Transnistria thing, which has its own army, police, KGB, to this day it's called KGB in Transnistria. Basically he kept this country. Well, he tried to keep it under this unitarian law, under this unitarian constitution. Although by the end of his term, he was trying to play like Lukashenko, basically, here, there, let's talk a bit with you. This was the time when it was possible. It's unimaginable now, but back then it was okay. You could call yourself like this communist. You could shake hands with Putin and also go to Brussels and say, look, we are actually Europeans, you should give us money. And this is what was happening after, but until 2009. In 2009 there were rigged elections, and the thing is that it's quite hard to really rig elections in such a small country because you have lots of embassies. Like these embassies, they are more influential when the country is smaller.
Yeah.
It's difficult to explain, but basically when you have the same amount of the same amount of organizations as like in Kiev, but the entire population of Moldova is half of Kiev, right? It's like it's
everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, basically everybody knows everybody, and if the elections were rigged, be sure everyone will know about it. And also there were groups of well, the opposition, basically people who supported independence and supported the unification with Romania to some extent. This was like the main idea because, well, our language is Romanian.
I remember that.
Yeah, besides
It's written in Cyrillics, yeah.
yeah, no, right now it's in Latin. In Soviet times it was in Cyrillic.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about language, which is an extremely important topic like in Moldovan history, because even our anthem it's called Our Language, Naša Mova, or Limba Noastră. This is how it starts, because the whole point of the independence was, hey, we don't want to be Russified. And we are Romanians, we speak Romanian, please fuck off. This like the general national idea of lots of post-Soviet countries, but it was for quite some time. In 2009 there was this huge protest of the students. I was in the 6th grade, and I remember when our school was closed, you know, the first floor in our school was closed, the doors and everything, so that the guys from the high school classes, the 11th, the 12th, wouldn't run away and go to the center. Because what this mass of people, the students, etc., what they did, they actually took over the building of the parliament or the presidency. But then, after, well, some of these people dispersed, the police came in. So basically the police allowed to the protesters to take over the building, and then during the night they were catching one by one, or like coming to their homes, etc. And in the span of 1 week, approximately hundreds of students, especially like young adults or students, even school guys and girls, were beaten up, killed. I mean, everything, the same Maidan, basically, the same Maidan story. But really short period of time, and well, basically Voronin understood that he is not gonna stay. He has not the resources, he didn't have this berkut, you know, to really stand up, and Romania said, look, if you continue like this, we will do everything possible, like you, to remove you from power. And also Russia wasn't really interested at that time, 2009, in Moldova, and basically dealing with...
They just had a war with Georgia.
Yeah, exactly, and it was Medvedev, and it was like, look, I mean, Ukraine is kind of in our sphere of influence, Moldova, yeah, whatever, we don't care about this. And it's the benefit of being a really small country, that sometimes the empires, the aggressors, they really don't care that much about you.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, we could genocide you again for the second or third time, but we have our stuff to do. And this is what saves us right now from potential civil war, I would say. Skipping like what happened after these protests, there were re-elections, the European parties came in, but these European parties, they were some of them were extremely corrupt. Like there were people from this Communist Party of Voronin who basically switched to the oligarch. Like in Spain, and basically we ended up, there were 3 parties that took the government, and
2 of them were made up of people who used to be in the government.
Exactly, and one of them was the so-called Democratic Party. There was Liberal Democratic and the Liberal Party. And the Democratic Party was created and bought up by an oligarch called Plakhatniuk. And this guy was extremely important. Like he wasn't a politician in a sense. He was this oligarch that controls everything. He had his own guys, like his own secret police, I would say.
We're gonna go to this one soon. Since you're talking about Europe, so.
All right, and yeah. Basically, what happened is that in like 5 years, we saw almost no reforms, like really little. We had some reforms, but the level of corruption, it only increased because the same people stayed in power, and the new ones just had more power, and it ended up with a huge fraud, 2013, and these bastards, they basically have stolen 1 billion, more than $1 billion from the National Reserve of Moldova. This is our national budget for 1 year.
Fuck.
This is the state budget for 1 year, basically. They stole it from the reserve. So through machinations, etc. But it was a huge scandal because for Moldova, 2 million people, it's a lot of money. Maybe it sounds okay, whatever, 1 billion. No, it's actually, it's certainly a big chunk of the national budget, the state budget of Moldova. And of course, people were absolutely pissed about that, and two main opposition groups emerged. The first one were the pro-Europeans, basically people like you and me, etc., like people who went on the protests in 2009, and they said, look, we want in Europe, we want in NATO, but we don't agree with this shit. It's not. It's absolutely crazy. Like, this level of corruption cannot be justified by anything.
Yeah.
And there was another group, which was basically a Russian-backed socialist party of Igor Dodon. Sorry, Igor Dodon.
I've heard that name.
Yes, exactly. This guy, he became the president after. But there was a president who didn't matter. Actually, Timofey, which was elected by the parliament, and basically the prime minister was in charge, like the main person in the country. And there was this party which on elections day in 2013, the Democratic Party, remember, they came with 14% of the votes. So that in like 1.5 years, they became the majority in the parliament. How? Because they basically bought the deputies from other parties and they joined this party. So you have a party which had 13% of the votes, then suddenly they are the majority. How do you like that? And
that happened in Ukraine a couple of times.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you know how it happens. It was like this, the party Regionov and stuff, which did exactly the same thing. And this guy who was the president of this party, Vladimir Plakhatnyuk, this guy was basically Yanukovych in everything. Like, he was talking like Yanukovych. He had the same background as Yanukovych.
He went to jail for stealing somebody's hat.
No, this guy had he had made his first million on human trafficking.
Alright, I don't know if Yanukovych was involved in human trafficking.
Yeah, ours was. I mean, basically a gangster guy, like absolutely unstoppable in like any. This guy who lives on and was talking like this Russian/post-Soviet gangster, although he was Moldavian, but like he was sometimes in interviews, which were not a lot. He wasn't very public. He was talking about this thing понятие, which is it's hilarious for us. But
I understand people. So to understand, for people, so that we probably should. Понятие is the kind of jail law for people who went to jail in the Soviet Union. So essentially, like US, Europe, many people have their gang law, and they will be it will be different for every gang, for every nationality.
Yeah.
In Soviet Union, it didn't matter which nationality you were. If you ended up in jails, you had this понятие, right? And this was a whole set of laws, and it didn't wherever you came from, you were like, this is the laws, and you have to follow them.
The official rules of they are unofficial, like in the prison, right? But they actually influence your life very much. If you are there, first there are not classes but castes of people in this prison system.
No,
right?
class is more like, because caste is something you can't really change.
But actually you can't. I mean, if you were considered Petuch, then
there's like certain levels where after that, like, it's the same as if you've been in prison for 20 years for like killing someone, it's very hard to come out into a normal life and get it. So you could, some as you don't grow up, but overall you could, if you haven't done anything so to the level where you would be like completely like wiped out, you would come into jail and you'll be on this level, but if you stayed in jails and followed those laws, you would actually grow through the levels.
True. But the thing is that, well, there is a hierarchy, yeah, this mafia hierarchy, and this guy Vladimir Plakhatnyuk, he basically
Was on the top of it.
was, yeah, one of the top heads of this mafia. Everyone knew about him, although he tried as much as possible to distance himself from politics. He even went so far that he gave up his deputy role. Basically, he wasn't the parliament anymore. Although before that he was the vice prime minister, and he tried to run for the prime minister, which was the main person in the country. But after the protests, when he saw a situation which actually killed him politically, when the pro-Europeans hate you and the pro-Russians hate you, and the only people who actually support you are basically people that you are paying.
Yeah.
That's it. There are no parts of the population who would genuinely support your party, support you as a political actor, etc.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, well, this is what happened in 2019. There were new elections, and there was this 3 months when the new parliament had to choose a new government, and it was exactly 1/3 this Democratic Party, 1/3 the new party, which is the party of the current president Maia Sandu. It was called PAS. This PAS were the pro-Europeans, like this, city intellectuals or like Moldavian diaspora, people who are like really educated. They had like this middle class people.
Probably a bit younger as well.
Yeah, a bit younger, exactly. Mostly Romanian speakers, but not always. So like very, very like European type of people, not nationalists. Although like with some, of course, like patriotic discourse, like we speak Romanian, etc. But not that far. That's to say, we should expel somebody. Like absolutely European guys. And there was this party of Igor Dodon, which were the socialists, the another third of the parliament, which was basically pro-Russian party, nothing to do with the left, like politically speaking, but these guys were basically, support the church, hate LGBT, all the stuff, Putinists, that's it. But to that point, well, you have this weird situation. On one hand, for example, you're a PAS, right? What do? Are you fighting about, again, both of those groups? Or, because if they unite, then there will be another 4 years of stagnation, and they will basically take the power together, which was a problem. And somehow, first this party, and second the Romanian, the European diplomats in general, the American ones as well, they presumably, this is like the general feeling, the idea that people sort of know what happened, but it wasn't official, is that United States and Russia had sort of an agreement about Moldova. Like, look, we should get rid of Plakhatnyuk. This should end, okay? There will be 2 parties, one pro-European, one pro-Russian, but this guy pissed everyone, and he pissed everyone. He had a lawsuit against him in Russia, another one in Romania, which was like you basically have you have 2 enemies, Russia and Romania, historical, that hate each other, and you piss them both. And you can't go anywhere. So basically what happened is that there was some turmoil there, but he left the country. He left the country with some people, presumably he's in Turkey right now. The police is looking for him. He has a lot of lawsuits on like various crimes. But this guy was one of the most important, the most powerful persons in Moldova. Then we had this like joint government between with the the PAS and socialists, which went as good as you can expect. I mean, pro-Russians and pro-Europeans in the same government, right?
You know what I've noticed?
Yeah.
One thing about ex-Soviet Union. If you take many pro-Russian parties, right, in ex-Soviet Union state, this is why they like in Ukraine and like Latvia, Lithuania, something like this. As soon as people say they're communists, they get automatically banned, not because they're communists, but because everybody knows this. These are Russians.
Yes, exactly. It has nothing to do, like, people, this is like something that pisses me off a lot, especially here in Berlin, which has a lot of, like, the left scene is generally quite big in the West, and when you say, look, we forbidden the Communist Party, it's like, oh my god, you're so right-wing, why would you do that? It's like, they have the right, you know, to be leftists, etc.
Look, I'll stop you for a second. I consider myself a communist, right? I consider myself a socialist. I'm open about that shit.
Yeah, me too. I mean, not communist, but socialist certainly. But
I've made videos about why communism is gonna win. Okay, and why it's but I'd like to say that when people are forbidding the Communist Party in Ukraine or in Moldova or in places, they're not forbidding the actual ideas of communism.
absolutely, yeah.
Because for a very long time the communism is associated with Bolsheviks.
Yeah.
Right? And most of the old guard Bolsheviks that were in Soviet Union, they moved on. They either repainted themselves as something else, or they became the communist parties. And essentially, I generally say, look, you know, these are the people who do not want democracy. As soon as they get given the opportunity, number one, they all straight away start running to Moscow.
Yep.
Right? First thing they do is they run to Moscow. And for some reason, they don't have the fucking brains to understand that Moscow is not a communist utopia. It's a bunch of thieving twats that have literally got into power and will do anything in their power to stay in the powers just so they don't get found out. And these guys, they're willing to sell out everything because we're for Soviet Union, and yet they're not building anything, they're not creating anything. One of the problems
Basically, that's something which it's really difficult. I have lots of friends who are leftists, who are like here from Germany, this kind of, you know, middle class students at Freie Universität, at Humboldt, etc. And they're saying, look, but well, Ukraine, how could they ban the Communist Party? And when I hear this, I have this huge urge to take them and like meet one of the not even the voters of this party, like the former voters, because the party is forbidden, but like the people who are actually in this party and compare them, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think about LGBT? What do you think about like nationalism in general? What do you think about that and that? Like the church, etc. And you will see that there are huge differences. Like there are no similarities between them.
Yeah.
So except the hammer and sickle, there are absolutely no similarities. And basically what happened with the so-called communist parties in the former Soviet Union, they are basically these chauvinistic pro-Russian parties who dream about a great nation again, based on the Russian culture and language. That's it.
Not only that, many of those parties actually get money from Moscow.
Yeah, exactly. Ours was exactly that.
They're essentially, it's like one of the reasons many people didn't like communist parties, because there was a communist party in England, there was a communist party in France for a while, which was essentially paid for and supported by Soviet money.
Yeah.
And it's like, and all those people, as soon as the money ran out, they'd be like, okay, I'm not a communist anymore.
True.
So, as long as they're like, you know, this is why I started making those videos in English, like what we're doing now, is because many people, they don't get this Ukrainian, the Moldovan perspective. They listen to the Western commentary, right? And quite often a lot of that commentary comes off and I listen to some of the stuff people were saying. I was like, this is bullshit. And like, actually I'm gonna show, I've got some channels which I generally advise people to watch, which is like, this guy is a Ukrainian, Denis Davidov,
Alright.
who does videos about situation in Ukraine, and he just recently moved to out of Ukraine, so I think he's like in Switzerland or Italy now, I think. But it's only like about a month, less than a month or so. But this guy is like, so he does very good videos, like short videos, and he still got like, he was still in Ukraine when he was making them. This channel, a privateer station, like when they make my videos, I generally say, hey, look up to this. And this guy, he's doing like, he translates and he dubs the videos, like for example, Arestovich,
Yep.
then Fagin, mostly those guys, mostly the videos by through Fagin channel, but some others, but he dubs them into English.
Oh, okay, that's it. Okay.
So essentially they get ideas from Ukraine side of view, not from the, like, you know, Russian mouthpieces. Like, it's always funny when they like, you watch some American channels, like actually another one, Hromadska. These guys, they do videos, news from Ukraine, but they have subtitles on their videos.
Yep.
So you can watch them and you have subtitles in English, and you can hear what people say, what people think. Yeah, it's in Ukrainian, but you can read the subtitles. So if you want to watch the videos on something like this, you can go and watch those channels. But this is it. You don't have like, it's funny, you watch like, for example, someone like Joe Rogan. He talks about situation in Ukraine. It's like, well, have you got a single fucking Ukrainian on your channel?
No.
No. And Joe Rogan is actually trying to get the situation, right? You know, he's been independent. He can afford that. But there's a few channels I've seen in English, a couple of channels I've seen in German, not many. Because my German is still not on the level where I watch a lot of channels. But, and what they will do is they will bring Russians in.
Yeah.
They will bring Russian on their channel. The Russian will tell you how Russians see this, how it should be in Russian ideas. It's like, where's the Ukrainians? Where are the Ukrainians on those channels? I mean, many of those channels, they're like in US or like, there's plenty of Ukrainians living around there. You can just say, hey guys, we're looking for some Ukrainians, you know, who can represent other ideas.
I think it's another thing which is well, first this the Russian propaganda, generally speaking, it uses this in a very postmodernistic story, like, but this is true, like postmodernistic way, you know. They are trying to say to one part of the Western society, Western people in general, we are leftists, we are still the same Soviet Union, support us. And to the other guys, like AfD, Front National, you know, Jordan Peterson, etc., like this kind of like right-wing populists, they are saying, look, we support the church, we are like for the family values, etc., all the bullshit. And
No, what they do is they send a guy with a bag full of money.
Exactly, and by...
And the guy says, look, you know, we would like to support you.
Yeah.
And here's this small channel which gets like 50 grand from making their videos a year. And then somebody comes in, they bring half of them. You know, all of a sudden this channel becomes a mouthpiece. And quite often people do this as well because they want to be anti-establishment or something like this.
Exactly, exactly.
I mean, I'll give you an example, right? This is a Ukrainian journalist, Yuri Butusov, a very, very well-known journalist in Ukraine.
Yep.
Right? It's not a first time where I have to go, where he talks to me in this video, where I go, guy, you are either sold out or you're a fucking traitor. The stuff he says, so, and I'd probably say he sold out and he's a fucking traitor.
Okay, what did he say exactly?
In this particular video, he talks about the fact, he says, look, you know, they've caught some generals in SBU and in the army who have been Russian spies.
Mm.
And then he would steer things up. He said, now we have to tell them, we have to get the president, we have to get the, like these guys, we have to get them to answer, we have to rise up against them because they put these guys in power.
Okay.
So because this guy who was a general of SBU at the time that Ukrainian president has become a president,
Mm-hmm.
right? This Russian spy has gone up all the way to being a general at the in like SBU Служба безпеки.
Basically, the
Yeah.
secret service.
Yeah,
of
like
Ukraine.
he's been a general in secret service. He's been serving there for 30 fucking years.
Yeah.
Right, and the president was like, wow, this guy has got like, you know, you guys give me his name and you say he's perfectly great, and then now they've just worked out that he's been actually a Russian spy,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy would go, we have to make president responsible for that because he made him a like head like a
But
head
this
of
guy was in the
sec-
secret service for a shitload.
for 30 years, yeah. Like he'd be like, you know, how the he's not saying like how the fuck did we manage to miss that? No, he's making the current president and
Responsible.
current leadership in the middle of a fucking war. He says we have to get them,
Okay, but this is.
but this is the way Russians work. You get guys like this who quite often say, and then they start saying things, and you go like, wait a minute, right? This is the stuff you were saying here, and this is the stuff you're saying here.
Yep.
And they're so like, you know, and you go like, how much did they pay you to say this?
Well, the thing with the paying, you see, the. How should I explain it? Sometimes, well, there are people who pursue their political goals in general. I assume that this guy could be paid, but it's not about him specifically. It's generally speaking. For example, we have this Poroshenko guy, right, the former president,
Yeah.
who is just not stopping. Like he's talking bullshit lots of times because he understands. Okay, he's nothing. He's nobody right now. He's trying to like bring as much. I don't know, like
Wow. Yeah.
basically make PR for himself. And how do you do how do you promote yourself? The easiest way, basically, you start shitting on Zelensky, start shitting on the.
But the thing is like, it's okay if you do it during a peaceful time.
I mean,
But when you, there is like, there's times, and trust me, this is not the first time I had to talk against this particular journalist, so to
Mhm.
say. Right, you've probably seen on my channel, there's a video, Tanks or Roads,
Yep.
right? That's him writing the article I was replying to,
Okay.
right? And it's not just him, like, you know, and there's a few cases like this, and you go like, wait a minute, brother. Right, this is war, right? When the war is finished, and you say, look, you know, we had this, and this, we need to ask those questions. I get you. You probably will have the full right to do this. But when in the middle of the war, you start telling people that they should rise up against the government that does all their best.
So, well here's the line, right? I think it's okay to criticize to some extent, like the leadership, etc. If you're doing it like sanely, it's one thing. The other thing is to call people on the streets. This is what he's doing.
He's saying we have to, like right now he says, we have to make the president responsible for, like, say, making this guy in general. We have to judge him, he has to be in the court. Like, what the fuck? The guy is running the fucking war effort.
Yep.
He should be finding time to go to court because he promoted a person that probably people who pay him allowed to stay in service for 30 fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Same article when he was like Tanks or Roads, he was saying, yeah, we have to make the president responsible, like, you know, for having built roads instead of buying extra 20 tanks. It's like you do understand that like you essentially telling people to go and fight the president at the time of war, but
Yeah.
he's outright lying because like you need roads, you need stuff like this, and obviously he says he's a military journalist, and if he's a military journalist, there's no way he does not understand the importance of being able to get from place A to place B in the middle of fucking war.
Yep. Indeed.
Right? And this is the way, but this is the way Russians work. What they will have is like, they will have a politician which is like, oh, he's alright. And then they come in and they go like, there you go, brother. Then all of a sudden, he starts saying something. And you go like, wait a minute. And quite often they do it like very, very, like, more or less subtly. And unless you kind of somebody who's good at picking up because you like, know someone or you have some knowledge of the subject.
Yep.
Like I studied business when I was in school. Like I went to a separate classes where they would teach us like economics, the importance of like deliveries, systems and everything else. So I know when people start saying stuff, I go like, wait a minute, right? I know this, I studied it. Right? Maybe it wasn't like a full university degree, but I understand how important it is. Like, you know, I remember how this very guy was writing articles about the fact that there was trainings in the military camp, and they did not, the delivery service wasn't up to scratch.
Yep.
And they didn't set up a training camp properly. Like, so they didn't deliver something in time, you know how these things happen. And these guys were saying like, oh, that's because we don't build roads, that's because we don't have the infrastructure anymore.
Okay.
And now in the time of war, this guy is writing articles how building infrastructure was bad and we should have spent more money, just don't build the infrastructure, just buy more tanks.
Okay. Well, retrospectively you can say whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. But coming back to the money paid by the Russians, this is like the journalists and stuff. This thing really interests me in terms of the logistics, how they are doing this. Because I'll give you the example, Igor Dodon, coming back to Moldova. This guy is charged right now on several points. One of them is basically his foundation was receiving 50,000 euros per month from a Russian-backed company from abroad. Like, this guy was basically paid while he was in office as a president of the country by the Russians. Okay, think about this. And now there's this investigation. It blew up because of the investigative journalists mostly, who found out about this and then slowly
Walked up and made a case.
yeah, the case because we have now, after another election, we basically this pro-European party, it won. It has a comfortable government, etc. But if you won the election, doesn't matter. You've changed the system, especially like the judicial and so on. So now there is this purge moment in Moldova when they slowly, steadily
Cleaning that shit out.
yeah, exactly. They try to they close one of the pro-Russian parties. They want to close another one because the socialists, because the so-called they are straight up paid by the Russian government. And the funny thing also that I found out that the YAF organization was closely attached to the Eurasians, the Euro-Asians, so-called the Dugin's organization.
Okay. I think I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, the Dugin, the guy who is like this fascist ideologue of Russia.
Isn't the guy whose daughter got killed?
Exactly.
recently?
Yeah. This guy, and he has an organization which is called Euro-Asianists, which is an YAF organization, not only YAF but youth especially, that promote this sick idea of like Eurasia as opposed to the West, the East, etc. So like the Eurasia should be, a thing which should absolutely be separated from the Americas, for example, or Japan and so on. And
Japan is part of Asia.
yeah, no, not for them. It doesn't matter.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's not about. It's like a right-wing fascist Russian group who had their sort of brother and sister organizations in Moldova. It was called the League of the Russian Youth in Moldova.
Oh.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it was especially
The name doesn't say it, does.
absolutely, and they were especially active in the Russian. Well, we have two types of schools, right?
Yeah.
We have schools in Romanian and in Russian language as well. We do, unfortunately, absolutely in Russian, and people are graduating the schools. I'm saying this as a Russian speaker from Moldova, right? I clearly remember that my parents, although we were speaking Russian at home, they said, "Look, you will go to a Romanian school. Like you will learn in Romanian because the Russian schools just first suck. Not all of them, but also you are basically living like in Russia for 12 years of your school, and you have almost no contact with the Romanian language itself. And what happens in this case, coming back all the way to the finances, you have these organizations of youth who are targeting specifically the schools, specifically like the groups, the Russian-speaking groups in the universities, etc., because you need youth in these organizations. And also the socialists, they have such an organization which is really ideological, which is really prepared for. They are really, so to say, but they basically brainwashed, but brainwashed, from the very young age, like from the very first class. So it's something that Russian propaganda really invests through this network of organizations, and then you add the journalists, then you add the politicians, and you have this huge network which is basically the only task of which is to destroy your country. This is what is happening in Moldova, this is what happened in Ukraine before that, but I'm thinking about all the logistics. So how GRU, which is probably the actors who are doing this thing, as incompetence, or I don't know who is doing this, because like we're thinking about the secret services of Russia.
Because the GRU is the army intelligence service. So essentially the GRU, they look for like military secrets and stuff like this.
Yeah. Okay. But who's doing the propaganda thing? Who's paying this journalists, etc.? Because
This would be probably down the lines of FSB, because that's what KGB used to be.
yeah.
So they're more political. GRU is more military.
Because so far, the investigations, our investigations came up. It was FSB mostly, but sometimes it were for example, the oligarchs, Russian oligarchs, or even Prigozhin, this guy, which from the Wagner group. So basically, you had lots of connections which weren't always through this FSB. And I'm still curious how this network happens, because from my point of view, these services, they are quite incompetent, to be honest, to some extent.
To be honest, it's the same like in Ukraine, for example. Now they started to get rid of it, is through Moscow churches, for example.
All right, yeah, the church as well.
So
yeah.
there is a thing I call a 7-block ghettos. And this is something I picked out from England as well, when living in England, because I live not far from London. And I go to London, and they had a very big problem of people not really connecting. So they still have like Muslim extremists there. But they managed to get rid from a lot of extreme recruiters from UK. They actually had to kick some of the people out. And a few years back, I've made a video where I was saying that look, the political correctness had failed, right? And in there, I was making this point of a 7 block ghettos. And if you go in London, people live in essentially not tight communities, but like this is area where, for example, mostly Arabs will live, right? Here, this is a little area where mostly Sunnis will live. So like Arabs are different from each other, right? You know, they're not all the same. And it will be like a few blocks by a few blocks, where these generally going to be this group of people living. This here is this group of people. This group of people here, like you have like Jewish blocks. It was funny because I was visiting London, and the guys who lived in there, like they were Ukrainians who were visiting, and they were saying like, you see, this side of the street is dirty, but that side of the street is clean. He says, well, this side of the street is normal blocks. That side of the street is the Jewish side of the street.
I see.
And they have this special cleaners. And a lot of police officers that will be covering that area, they will be from that Jewish area.
I see. I see. I see.
Right? And then you look down here, like this is kind of like 2 Ukrainian blocks, where mostly Ukrainian. Right? And here, like you see those houses over there, those are mostly Polish, right? You know, like Polish and Ukrainian, we talk between each other, but like there's been at that time when I was in London, there was lots of problems with Polish. It was beginning of 2000s, and lots of Polish came in. They were heavily abused by big corporations in England, and essentially they were bringing the cost of labor down heavily in the building industry. They've been bringing the cost of labor down in many other industries. And the big what happened is because the Polish just became part of the European Union, and the big corporations will be advertising in Poland, saying, "Hey, come to Poland, come to UK, and you'll be getting like I don't know, £2,000 a month." Right. The problem is at the time, people who were doing exactly the same jobs were making £4,000 a month. And the cost of living in London really kind of showed that. So they were making £4,000 a month, but not because of the reasons that you needed that £4,000 a month. So there was like, there was lots of like tensions between this and like this area is this. But what I also found is like if Polish, Ukrainians, like they were small communities and they were forced to integrate with society, right?
Okay.
You had very old communities like Islamic community, right? And what was happening is I've noticed, I was speaking to the guys from these communities, then they said, I grew up in that area, and the only reason, the only way I could get out was go to university.
Okay.
Like, not even to college. Because he'd go to college, but he still come back to his, like, you know, mom and dad.
All right.
And he's going out from that area to go to uni, like I was living in Brighton, which was a gay capital of United Kingdom.
Okay.
Right, so now you have like this Muslim guy, and then there's an Indian community over there, right? And Muslims and Indians, they don't mix.
Yeah, I know.
Now this guy lives 2 streets, like this is the line between Muslims and Indians, right? So this guy lives 2 streets down this way. His girlfriend is Indian, and she lives 2 streets down this way. And in Brighton, they're boyfriend and girlfriend. In London, they would not be seen together for the fear of reprisals.
Jesus, okay.
And not so much for the guy, but for the girl.
Of course, yeah.
I was dating an Indian girl as well at some point of time, and she was like, she had 2 brothers, and she was afraid to introduce me to her bigger brother.
Alright.
Because he was like very old-fashioned, and like we split up, and this was like one of the worst decisions I've made in my life. She's absolutely brilliant girl. If she ever hears this, Pam, I love you. But she was a very nice girl, but she was afraid to introduce me to her bigger brother because she said, I'm afraid because he will attack you.
Alright.
I was like, sweetheart, I grew up in Ukraine in the 90s. What the fuck you talking about? She says, oh, he's like very like traditionalist. He wouldn't want me to date you, so he will try to attack you to make me, like I said, you don't understand, I will put him in the fucking ground. You do know this. And she knows it, then like she saw me training martial arts and things like this. And she knew I can take care of myself. She says, now I'm even more scared introducing you to my bigger brother, because one of you is gonna put the other one in the fucking ground.
Brave, yeah, okay.
And I was like, look, I'm joking. I'm not gonna drop out your brother. I'm just gonna be the big boy. Like, she's like, it still doesn't matter because your brother was like still very much likely to pick a fight. And I was talking about this video about political correctness, the 7x7 ghettos. And many people who were picked into like extreme movements in England, they would live in those ghettos. It doesn't matter whether it's a poor white people living in that ghetto or whether it's a poor Muslim people living in their ghetto. Because these guys, they live within those things. They have these ideas. They're poor. They're disenfranchised. And they get out into the bigger area. Let's say he's a white guy from this little area in London where they speak their own, pretty much their own fucking English language.
Yeah.
Which nobody can fucking understand except these guys. And then there's this Muslim guy who's most of his life, he grew up among Muslims. He had a certain expectation of life, but he was not that guy who managed to get into uni, right? Yeah. He gets out because he grew up, he gets out, and he speaks English, but quite often has its own, like, and people say, yeah, you know what, you're not gonna get a good job. Like, you know, the job he gets is shit job. You know, he can't get a proper girlfriend because he's that poor, he lives with his parents, stuff like this. And this is where the extremists will pull their people from.
Exactly.
Into their groups, right? Same thing happens in like Moldova, I think. There's like
yes, yeah, exactly.
You see guys which are like, yeah, like Moldova is moving towards Romania. You know, if you really want to grow up, you have to speak Romanian.
Yeah, to some extent, at least, yeah, absolutely.
At least so. He gets out from his Russian school, right?
Yeah.
He has only Russian parents. He lives in the area where he has only Russian friends. They watch only Russian TV channels. Yeah. And Romanian is very much different from like, you know, if you speak Russian, Ukrainian is still bit easier to pick up.
Exactly, and with Romanians much.
In every school, you still have to learn Ukrainian. You have it. This is one of the exams you have to pass.
Well, in theory, Moldova is the same, in theory, but in practice, I mean...
Yeah. And these guys come out, and here you got this organization for young people. Right, they're shit, but they don't need to go looking. You already have a guy who's not fitting in.
Yeah.
Same way as they would be picking up people in Estonia, right? So I talked with a guy who was living in England. He was from Estonia. He was pretty much. He said, "Look, I'm of Russian origin. I do speak Estonian. Some Estonian, not perfect, because you know he was already growing up. Like you know, at the times when things were changing, he passes the exams and stuff like this. But his uncle is full Estonian. He's half Estonian. His mother's Estonian. His father's Russian. Right? And his uncle said to him, "Look, you know." I can put you in to a certain extent, but you will not go anywhere past that. You have zero chances here, because at this time of term, you know, at the time was like beginning of 2000s as well. He was like, look, you know, like now Estonia have changed, obviously, but at that time he was like, he had zero chances in Estonia. Because he didn't speak good language. If you want to grow up as a part of the government or even big business,
yep.
You really have to do this. And he didn't have that ability to start his own business. and as well quite often because you have to know Estonian to the level when you deal with the documents and things like this.
Yeah.
But in Estonia, they had a way out. You speak English, you can go to Europe, you can find jobs, and you like go, you see the world, you have the passport, and you go, oh my god, shit.
Exactly. In Moldova, it's a bit different. Thing is, we are not part of European Union, obviously, but like half of the countries with Romanian passports.
If they speak Romanian, and many of the Russians do not.
It's a bit more complicated. Like you can have a Romanian passport, even if you barely speak Romanian. It depends on your ancestry.
Yeah, so
So this is the difference. If you're like your grandparents, for example, from Russia, etc., they were never citizens of Romania. You will never see Europeans. Exactly. So you have no possibility to travel that easily to Europe. Exactly. Basically, your world ends starts from Moldova and then somewhere in Vladivostok, but certainly not across the.
they
the
can't
route.
even go to Vladivostok properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
That's the point. So this is what I'm saying. They have their 7 blocks by 7 blocks.
Right.
And they can't get out of this. Right, sure, if they put on, if there's like somebody who's got an IQ of like 120, they can. But that's not the guys that get picked up by all the
From these organizations. Yeah. That's true.
You see, and this is like the guys who get pushed by like somewhere in the West, like you say, somebody runs his own little TV channel.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I'll give you an example. You know the guy Spermosov?
Yeah, I know.
I just like the name Spermosov.
Yeah. I mean, he was.
Sperm mustache.
Yep.
Is he still alive? I don't know.
No,
Like, he got killed, I think.
Yeah, he got killed. It was. It's actually very interesting. He got killed, right? Long story short about this guy, he was a collaborator. He was an Ukrainian, a freak from Kherson. Then he became the not the governor, the mayor.
Mayor.
So the so-called mayor of Kherson started by the Russian government, and he got killed instantly after they lost Kherson. So
Yeah.
like in the process, not even Kherson wasn't liberated by the Ukrainian army.
Yeah.
The guy crashed in a car accident.
Okay. Do you know that when he started his career as a journalist, 'cause he was a journalist for some very long time,
Yeah.
he started in like 2014.
Mm-hmm.
He would speak only Ukrainian.
All
He
right.
had Ukrainian flag. He was all pro-Ukrainian, and then at some point of time he just changed,
All right.
and he started being very pro-Russian. Same as well. When he started being a Ukrainian journalist, he was doing some. He's not a super good journalist, like same as I'm not a very good YouTuber, right? But he was actually trying to cover some very interesting subjects he really worried about. Things which were like, trying to give a different point of view, but he would be getting like 20 views,
Mm-hmm.
100 views, for a very long time. Because I went through his channel
All right.
at some point of time before the Russian invasion. I'll say that I've done it before the Russian invasion. Because I was interested about news from Kherson, and I saw him doing some stuff. I was like, okay, cool, let me see what he's like. But it's like, yeah, his first videos were like very pro-Ukrainian. Then he changes. He goes from Ukrainian to Russian. He says, he starts saying that, hey, we have to join Russia, stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is when his channel gets more following, he gets more clicks, more views. He gets more money, he gets better clothes.
Obviously.
So, he's been like, this is how they do it. They find somebody who's not doing very well and say, look, here's 20 grand. To them, it's nothing. They could use, obviously, this 20 grand to repair some building in Russia, but they don't give a shit about the buildings in Russia.
But for this guy, 20 grand is like basically live 1 year
Yeah,
not paying
yeah, this
your
is-
rent, your food, anything.
Well, couple of years definitely.
In Ukraine, yeah, in a couple of years.
Yeah, so he becomes like part of this Russian thing as well. Similar stuff. They find somebody who's like trying to do something but gets disenfranchised or wants to develop, like this is what I'm saying, US, in English speaking countries, in Germany you've seen a couple of channels which would be like they'll have only the Russians on their channel talking about Ukraine.
They have some examples because like I didn't see them.
I've seen some couple of German channels, but let's just look. I don't remember the guys. These guys. Yeah, for example, breaking points.
Alright.
I haven't been following. This is like
That's a huge channel actually.
yeah, there's a huge channel, but I haven't been following them for the last over a month.
Mm-hmm.
But beforehand, they'd be telling like, "Oh, we're giving like Ukraine weapons to Ukraine so that Ukraine can continue attacking Russia." It's like, what?
Alright.
What are you smoking?
Okay. Yeah, very informed. What can I say?
You know, and the only people I've seen them white to talk about situation in Ukraine. There's never Ukrainian. And then US, there's plenty of Ukrainians in US, right?
Yep.
They had Russians. They had Russians telling how bad it is because I'm Russian and because there's like, because Ukraine attacked Russia, they hated us now. It's like, wait a minute, like what are you smoking? But these are the guys. There's a Jimmy Dork or something like this. I don't remember. Jimmy Dor. Yeah, Jimmy
right.
Dork show. Yeah, this guy outright anti-Ukrainian propaganda most of the time. Most of the things I've seen him say.
Alright, wow.
Right, he's like ex-comedian, but he's running his own channel now.
Well, man,
Not awfully funny to be honest, most of the time. But he went into politics talk.
but who is he like on the ideological spectrum? Left, right,
He's
whatever.
kind of was between left and right, so like slowly moving to like appeasing towards like, you know. But to be honest, like at the moment, I don't divide left and right anymore because, like,
In America, he's American, right?
yeah, he's American.
That's what I'm trying to ask. Is like which party he supports, like Democrats or.
Fact, some that many of them they support one party, but some like, you know, like if you take these guys from the breaking point, right?
Mhm.
They support a lot of left stuff.
Okay.
Like when you see them talk.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to something like all of a sudden there's just Russians in there. All of a sudden, like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
we're like, why we're letting Ukraine fight against Russia? Like, what do you mean?
No, so this is another interesting topic. The whole horseshoe of like this political divide when you have this like weird people from far right and far left. Probably most of them paid, some of them just used by the Russian propaganda. They are having the same points, especially like even in Germany.
Yeah.
Even in Germany, you have this Die Linke, which is like the left party, and
I
the
remember
old
there is some lady which is like, you know, she's like, you know, we're going to do this and then she's like, we have to be like very open market and whatever else. She's like, you know, very pro-capitalistic kind of
Mhm.
thing. You know, and then she would be like, oh yeah, but you know, you know, she like spewed out Russian propaganda and you go like, what the fuck?
exactly Germany, AfD and Die Linke basically having the same points on Ukraine, almost always.
Yeah. There's also, yeah, see.
Yeah.
Right, and this is like, he will have like, you know, oh, we like, why we hating Russia? It's like, he's running all the Russian talking points.
Yeah.
this is like
Conspiracy theories, alright, all the good stuff.
yeah. So like this is what I'm saying. Quite often, many of these channels they'll be like, you listen to it, it's like okay, this is one thing, this is okay, and then they say something, you go like, you just said this, and now you're saying this. These are the two completely opposing things.
Yeah, contradictory.
Why? There was a great one. There's a Russian guy called Stepan Dimura. Do you know this guy?
No, actually.
He was pretty good like market person looking over the markets, but he also had like he would have run his programs and he would have very funny commentary on like current situations and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
He predicted the economic situation we're in right now. You know, like years before. But then, when the Russians just invaded Ukraine, he was like, "This is dumb shit you're doing." But then he's like, "But Ukraine, I was expecting that Ukraine is going to attack Russia because the West is going to make Ukraine attack Russia." It's like, and then he talks this. Right, and then you can hear, you listen to him for the first like, and you go like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
And he would have like a 2-hour seminars, and for the first like half an hour, he'd be running like the bullet points, which are more like Russian like government bullet points.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would run off the program, and then you listen there, and many people would start listening to him, and he got a lot of like very angry commentaries. But the guy lives in Russia, right?
Okay.
But he was like even beginning of 22, he was like, attacking Ukraine would be insanity. He was saying the war will probably happen, but that would be an insanity. And then he would run the program, then you see him doing the rest of his seminar, and then a lot of stuff he says in the rest of his seminar completely contradicts everything he said in the first half of his seminar, where he was running off the program which was written by whoever made him say that shit.
Alright.
And like, but
And it's all. It's sometimes I'm doing okay, thinking. You know these experts, the Western experts who are invited to Russian television from time to time, you know, to tell that Russia is good, etc. And they're sort of translated to the Russian public. It said in the Russian propaganda, the TV, etc., are showing, look, they came to our St. Petersburg Economic Forum or something, you know, these international experts. The recent one, I remember it was like she was a descendant of some, I don't know, or Prince of Monaco or something, but basically she was a wife of one of these guys. You know, with like this aristocratic heritage or something, for 1 month. Then they divorced, but she kept the title.
okay.
And then she was invited to the. She went to this St. Petersburg Economic Forum, and the Russian media took an interview from her, and she was telling, "Look, Russia is great, etc." So all the stuff. Basically, like a random person. And
I see your nose is starting to run a bit. Do you want?
No, that's all good. I think we can finish for today.
Well, we've been here for God knows how long now.
Yeah, it's already almost 10 o'clock. Thank you,
And
everyone.
we didn't get to talk about all the things like future things, like, you know, more about, because we talk about some history about, like, you know,
Yeah,
Moldova, stuff like this, but the situations, but yeah, we didn't even start moving on forward. But this shows like how much there is to cover,
Yep.
and how many things you don't hear those in the Western media.
Sure.
Like things like history, well, what happens in Moldova, and like I was gonna say at some point of time that, like, you know, comparing that to happening in Ukraine, and like the changes that are happening, like Moldova, you said, like mostly younger parliament.
Yes, yeah. Actually, we have lots of people who are. I personally know a few of them. The guys were under 30 when they went into the office, or like barely above 30 years old,
Yeah,
which is amazing. I mean, the entire team which is running right now the country is, I think, the most competent from what we had last 30 years.
Yeah, and most of them. And I had a program, video about Ukraine as well, and I was saying that if you look at Ukrainian parliament, as I did it a couple of years ago, but I think the average age was under 45.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
And you finally see those changes, and this is why you don't. And now, like one of the reasons why I believe Russia's going to fall apart is because you don't see those changes in Russia. Like their parliament, an average age.
70 years, 60.
Yeah, close. You look at Europe as well. This is why, Ukraine. Why Russia, Ukraine, Russia, Moldova, and Ukraine are so going towards Europe. Is because we have those connections. And this is like also we're gonna end up talking about. There's so much history to cover, but this is why the Russians can't so upset with it was like the changes that brought in by people in Moldova, the changes that are happening in Ukraine right now, and this is why I was kept this video to the last. Why Ukraine can't join EU is like they were talking about and we talked about this a bit, but obviously people in this video, the guys talk about that, look, Europe is going to have to change so many laws and so many things in Europe just to accept Ukraine and Moldova as well. Like, you guys want to join EU as well.
Sure.
So to get these countries, like between the two countries, you got 15 million people. Right? It's not a small feat, and I mean, in this program they talk about the amount of agriculture which is happening in Ukraine, the amount of agriculture that happens in Moldova, like things like this. They're like huge, and the influence they will have on Europeans, not just the markets, just overall, like the cultural influence Ukraine and Moldova. Okay, Moldova is a bit smaller, but that part where these are the two countries with probably the youngest parliaments in Europe, and the way of seeing things is huge. The difference in the way we see things, like we were talking today, like when you were talking about Prozora in Ukraine. That government system where you do everything with one app on your phone.
Dia.
Oh, Dia.
Prozora is another one for.
Prozora was a bit earlier, I think.
Yeah.
But the two, essentially the two IT system which move the governments into they all built on the experience which has been actually done in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But the Europe now falls behind. I mean, we're in Germany, right? I'm having to deal with
tons of letters, yes.
Yeah, literally to get something done instead of like for example, I mean, given the fact I lost a job, I had to go register myself as an unemployed, right? And you have to actually do this because in Germany you cannot. If you do not register yourself as unemployed straight away, they might actually complain about you doing this. Like, you have to do it straight away. And I had to deal with something, and they have an online form which you fill out. They really do. And you fill out this form, you send it, and somehow they managed to lose an online form. And then they found it. But the point is that for us, which is very weird, is like, I can send them emails with all the copies of all the documents, right? I don't want to have millions of papers, but for every reply I have to wait for a week for them to send me a letter before anything happens, and something like this. And the view of Ukraine is but this is the problem Russians have with Ukraine and Moldova as well, but Moldova, they prefer not to notice because it's very small and they already have their peace corps in Transnistria.
Yeah, Transnistria, right.
Yeah, they have their soldiers there, so they think, we can control Moldova. And I was like, no, they can't, because of the that change of generations.
Yep.
And the political changes in Ukraine and Moldova, like why it's an interesting subject, are not happening because like the policy all pro-European and things like this. It's because the people who came into power are very, very, very young.
Or very young, and they represent this middle class, like the general middle class, the most, a vast majority of people, maybe not the absolute majority, but certainly the people who live in the cities, who like they speak Romanian, Russian, if talking about Moldova.
It's not that, it's the fact that many of them are not full-on politicians. So like if you take president of Ukraine, he has not been in politics until he became president of Ukraine.
True.
So he was working with normal people. He does not live. This is what I find. I've made a video about why Europe is dragging its balls over sandpaper, or why West is dragging its balls over sandpaper. And I was saying that, I think it's there, saying that, look, the problem is politicians, European and many Western politicians, they live in their little political bubbles. They have no touch with, they are not in touch with reality.
Yep.
And I think that part where, like, you know, I mean, they have the French president on here, but most of his career, he's been in politics, I think.
Yep.
Or closely connected to politics. He's never dealt with people below a certain level.
Say Scholz, for example, the Chancellor,
German Chancellor, right?
The guy was in politics like since 17 years, and he's something like above 60 right now.
Yeah, so these are people. I mean, the French president is okay. He's like 50 something. Right? When he got into power, he's been like that. He's been in his 40s as well, but many of those people, they have very little, and I think the culture change in what happened in Ukraine, why it scares you Russia so much, and why Moldova is like, why Russians prefer not to touch Moldova, not to even mention it, is what scares them the most, is the part where, like, this is why they had to invade Ukraine in 2014, is because the people, you know, finally getting the say and the power, and all of a sudden, like, oh my God, you don't have to be this huge politician. Like, I mean, if I wanted to, I could have probably done it when the president just became president. I could have written to him and say, hey, I was born in Ukraine, I lived in Ukraine, I still got the Ukrainian citizenship. Right, I want to be part of your party. I want to join.
You could have done that. Absolutely.
And I could have become like a politician by now.
I know a guy, and he's a deputy in the Moldovan parliament. The guy is two years younger than me. He's 25 years old. The guy just barely ended up his bachelor, and while doing his bachelor in Paris, he was constantly traveling to Moldova to take part in the election campaign, and basically he was running his own blog, etc. He was super active from diaspora. But like, think about this, 25 years old.
The problems will start in 25 years when he's still fucking there.
Yep.
And this is what I find the problem is, like, I think this is one thing that Ukrainian case and Moldovan case is going to raise for Europe, is how long can we afford to keep politicians in politics, right? I generally say, look guys, you know, 50 years old and you need to go.
Yeah, true.
Like, or like, if you've been in politics for 15 years, time to piss off. Time
15 is a lot actually, but like, okay.
15 years.
Absolute
1-5. So
yeah.
You start at 25, by 40 you finished.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, you need to get out. We need to have this exchange of generations, exchange of views, because this is the main question, and Russia is very afraid of this question. The Russian people who are in power in Russia, they were losing that because they were losing that part of like the people in Russia were seeing Ukraine. They were not seeing Moldova because it was like a small country. It was easy to kind of hide it in the back.
Mhm.
But they were seeing Ukraine, and this is why I said they will attack Ukraine one way or the other, because what it gives that different way of viewing. And like this is one of the things people in the political commentators in Europe try to avoid, is that Ukraine, there's a Russian commentator who posed the question, government, who the fuck are you?
Mhm.
Right? And this is the question where like so many old people there, and this is what scares Russia. But I think in a way, with all the talk, I think much of the establishment in Europe starts asking themselves the same question, is like, if we bring those guys in and people go and see that gear, they see that system, Prozora, yeah? They see these people walking like this,
Mhm.
we're gonna become irrelevant, because we still, like most of the politicians in Europe, they're still in the 20th century.
I don't know if this will happen because still like Germany is an economic powerhouse. And
No, we're not talking about the Germany as the country. We're talking the state, as in the political system, as in the establishment of, like, you come into the company,
Mhm.
right? And like there's people there who like 90 years old, and the business is still being run as if it's like it's been the way it's been run when they were young,
Yeah.
right? And this is why like it's funny. I was looking for the jobs, and there's been a couple of companies. Like my last interview, I fucked up myself. I admit to that. But I was talking to some companies, and I was like, guys, look, perfect match, pass everything. But I go, look, guys, overall, I'm not saying you have to do it, but I would like to have a 30-hour working week. And I explained why I want to do this, right? So that was like end of summer,
Mhm.
right? And the companies, the people who were doing interviews, you could see their face change, like, what do you mean you want 30 hours? And I would explain to them, like, look guys, I live alone. I need time to go to the gym, to cook proper food, to travel to and from work, And they were like, my God, how can you be like this? Because
The 40 hours at least.
yeah, we don't want you to work more than 40 hours, but we don't want you to work less than 40 hours either. Like, it blows their head.
Yeah.
And another thing is what you see is like something the Ukrainians understand is that they said, look, we happy in Ukraine. But on the other hand, what you see is that drive to be part of Europe. And I don't know if you noticed it, because you're a bit younger than me, I think. But the way I see many younger people,
Mhm.
they see Germany, they see France, they see Belgium, they see Netherlands, they see Czech Republic, they see Romania, right? But they also see Europe, right? They like that idea that I can get
Travel.
up, not just travel, but I want to be able to get up and move to Romania
Easy.
without thinking.
Yeah.
This is why, like in Britain they vote for Brexit, and now the youngsters go, what the fuck?
Mhm.
I like the idea of being able. I don't. I maybe will never do this, but I like the idea of going and living in Germany, or like I lived in Germany, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Poland, been to Switzerland. I'll just get a job somewhere like this.
Yep.
And I go, yeah, I'm gonna go walk there. I mean, and more people of our generation, they don't see this like, 'cause they don't see this as, oh my God, it's a privilege. They see this more as a right
Yep.
to just do this, and to be able to go and, like, if you're interested in Spain,
You just go there, you can commute, you can find your job,
Yeah,
and
you
you will have the same legislation, the same medical
well, maybe
insurance.
not all the same.
But like the main, like it will be understandable for you. You're not, you have the same rights as a
Yeah.
citizen, except maybe voting and some minor stuff.
But even like if you go into European vote, right? You have the right to vote for maybe on the local elections,
Yeah, local elections.
but
actually.
European elections you can still vote.
No, even local in in Berlin, or you can vote for your, I think for the the Berlin Parliament.
Yeah. So
As
there's
far
like,
as I know.
but this is what I said is you can go, and if you lose a job in Spain, you will not be left penniless in the middle of the country. Don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, I have a British passport, but I lived in Germany for a while. I lost a job. I go register myself as unemployed. It's okay, look, you are unemployed, and because I moved to Germany before Brexit happened, completely finished, I have the same rights as the European. I lose my job, they say, oh, you're a European. There you go, you have these rights.
Yep.
So we will not leave you hanging right in the middle of a place you got no idea about. You know, and more younger Europeans, they like the idea of being born in France but studying in Berlin
Absolutely.
without any problems.
A new identity in some sense, like you're still French, German, Romanian, etc. But you're also European. It's like, hey, this is a thing. It wasn't a thing before.
Yeah,
It starts being a thing, being European, which is interesting.
yeah. And this is what I'm saying, is like Ukrainians, they love Ukraine. Most of them, like, because the younger generation is a bit more powerful in Ukraine and the older generation is more willing to support them rather than fight them, but many like Ukrainians, they say we're Ukrainians, but we're also Europeans. We might not want to move and stay in Berlin, just because the wages there are higher.
But have the opportunity to do it.
But we're part of Europe. We identify ourselves as Europeans.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this European identity is something which is, like I say, I've started noticing it, like, by many people, even like in London, like we were saying, like, what was seven by seven ghettos. But even from there, many people were going like, oh yeah, I like the idea of being able to see. The reason they were having problems is because they couldn't do this. They were getting upset because they couldn't be part of that.
Yep.
Like, you're disenfranchising me because I don't speak that language that you want me to speak. And the part of being European is that part of being Ukrainian. I think why Ukrainians so like Moldavans as well, because we have a very similar history in the way of like, dude, you want to be Moldavian? Okay, cool. So, okay, do you speak our language? Badly? Okay, you do. Do you like our wine? Oh, you like our wine? You're definitely Moldavian. And I remember I had, because I had some Moldavians, they bring me some Moldavian cognac.
Yep.
And I was like, I smelled it, I was like, sorry guys, this is not a very good one. They're like, how dare you? You're not a Moldavian! You're wrong.
Actually, the cognac is a bit trash, although the wine is good. Cognac is also dependent.
I think they brought a very nice one, but I was like, look guys, I don't drink, so things that would seem nice to you
I'm not okay. Okay.
might not be as nice to me, so for the alcohol, it has to be something fucking amazing for me to say it's nice. So something which you will like as a drink accept as nice, because I don't drink a lot of alcohol, but this also means that my perception of taste of alcohol is very different from yours, right? But they were like, but you're not a Moldavian, yeah, we don't like you anymore, you know, and we're not talking to you for the next 5 minutes.
Moldavians are a bit,
right?
jealous of the alcohol.
But this is what I'm saying, it's like, you know, but if you hit those three, like, you know, these two, like, I like grapes, I like good weather, I speak a bit of your language, and I like your wines. Like, shit, you're a Moldavian.
Yes, please stay. I mean, that was a feature of Moldova actually. That people would usually, if you would take the state apart, like the state, the Russification, etc. If people were moving to a Moldavian village, they would usually quite fast integrate themselves. Which there was actually still is. Saying, I would say, in Romanian language, Mama Rus, Tata Rus, iar Ivan Moldovan. Ivan Moldovan, right? So the mother is Russian, father is Russian, but Ivan is a Moldavian. Why? Because he is born here. He already picked up the language, etc. And if we're talking about small communities like villages, or even in the city, I have 3 Russian-speaking friends here in Berlin, who are from the same city as me, from Chisinau. And when we meet all together, we speak Romanian by default. Although they speak Russian at home, all of them. But it's just, I don't know why not. It's just not that we are like, you know, specifically thinking, oh my God, we shouldn't talk Russian, we should switch to Romanian. No, it's not. It's like, well, why not?
We're already here.
Well, yeah, we already speak it. It's our first/second language. Why shouldn't we? It's like we don't even think about this. And when we were meeting, when we met at one point, and everyone was talking Romanian, and I was like, wait a second. Like, in theory, every single one of us in our family, we were speaking Russian. But it's the disintegration, because everyone went to the Romanian schools, we had Romanian friends, we were comfortable with this. And this is the thing that in Romania as well, Moldova, etc., it's the language the thing, actually.
Yeah.
But besides that, you can easily integrate, more or less. Maybe sort of like some extent, maybe some local racism, if you were talking about people who are non-Europeans, like I mean, from other ethnicity, which is visible. But even this is not a problem. I mean,
so long as you come there and you respect the way people do things.
Exactly.
Like, same thing is, but Ukraine is very similar, right? You know, you hear lots of Ukrainians talk like tough talk, and then you'll be sitting there drinking with black guys. It's like, and you go like, guys, he's black. You're talking all this stuff. I was like, what the fuck you talking about? He's Ukrainian, right? Why? Because he's a black guy who came from Africa. Mm-hmm. He speaks Ukrainian, Russian. His sister's there. He's like, he's Ukrainian. What the fuck you talking about, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But this is the part which we didn't get to talk much about. Is that cultural acceptance of this is more of like Ukrainians, and like, because we went through the bad areas, but we're way more accepting of many things, despite the fact you have some crazy guys, you have some guys like just everywhere.
Yep.
But national trait is that, like, we're willing to accept, we're willing to be that open, and this is what's becoming part of European kind of trait.
Yep.
Maybe not Spanish, maybe not just Germans. You have Germans, or you have to speak German. Okay, but had to, when I was getting my German ID,
Mm-hmm.
some issues turned up, and I turned up there. I was a bit late. I just kind of it was a day when the trains were not going very well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what happened to you today? It was like same weather.
Yeah.
And they cancelled like half the trains, and they exchanged them on buses because there's some issues on the tracks, and I was late. And I went in there, and I was like, and this lady, she's like very upset because I'm like 20 minutes late.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go like, and I start speaking German to her, saying like, look, you know, I'd like to speak more German with you, but my German is very bad. And all of a sudden she goes like, oh my God, you're trying to speak German? Oh my God, look, it's great. Like, okay, cool. So you got your paperwork, like, oh, don't care about this, don't worry about this. Like, so she literally just took like 2 pieces of paper out of 20 that were on the bloody list. Right, I said, okay, cool, I'm just going to quickly run. Like, and then we spent another 10 minutes talking with me, talking in bad German.
Okay.
Literally just she was like, talk, why do you like, and I explained to her in very bad German that, look, the train, I was like, caught the train and it was supposed to be here at that time, but they closed the tracks on these stations and the buses like took where we were. And you have this, and you have that acceptance and the change of the generations and that acceptance you get, like this is what threatens, like Russians government, they completely like losing that.
Yeah.
But it's also going to bring very big changes to Europe, whether they accept Ukraine and Moldova into European Union
Or not,
but
it's still gonna happen.
it's still going to bring the changes. And you know, I hope it's going to be changes for the good. I hope that, like, you know, the Europeans are going to start looking at and saying, hey, we want younger politicians. We want them on local levels, because the most successful cities in Ukraine
Have young mayors, that's true.
they have.
Romania is the same, it's exactly the same thing.
You get like in Kherson, they chose an older mayor, right? Not as good, but in Mykolaiv, right? They have a younger mayor there. The city just grows up. They have the energy, and they have a new way of looking at things, and they go like, because the old people, they rely on the experience of 1980s.
Yeah.
But the younger ones, they go like, hey, you know, we are relying on the experience of 2000s, and we have experience of Europe. So we're taking the best things out of here and out of here. This is happening in Moldova, it happens in Ukraine, and I think once this war is finished, like, I mean, the interest to Ukraine is going to raise.
Absolutely.
So more and more Europeans, and when they will see how things have changed in Ukraine, and like you say, the 80s.
Moldova depends on Ukraine. If Ukraine will be alright, Moldova will be definitely alright.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying, the interest is going to raise, and then they'll go like, they will hear like, oh wait, Moldova holds, like, you know, for many Europeans, you say Moldova, they say, is it somewhere in Russia?
So it's not that bad, but they've heard about one in Transnistria, but that's it, and it's a problem. Certainly it will change, absolutely.
But I've had like, you know, I had people ask me, oh, isn't Ukraine part of Russia? And I was like, it's kind of the largest country in Europe. You know, you should probably know that part.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, we're gonna finish for today, I guess.
Yep.
We've been here for quite a while, and we have no
Thanks.
questions and no viewers. But if people watch this, guys, if you watch to the end, and if you like what we were saying, the conversation, but I'm gonna be a good YouTuber, and I'm gonna say, please share that.
Subscribe.
Right? Subscribe. If you don't, okay, please. But do click like, do share, and do ask questions.
And just in case this isn't
Yeah,
beer,
this is not alcohol. This is non-alcoholic beverages.
this is kvass, and this thing is
Lemonade.
lemonade from Albalon from Ukraine. So
Yeah,
we were not drinking alcohol, just in case.
Yeah, this is from Kiev. Right, it's a big Ukrainian brand, very well known, and they make lots of. They don't make just lemonades. They have quite a few different like soft drinks
Yeah.
and juices. So, yeah, but yeah, please do ask questions. Do write. Do let us know anything you want to hear from us. We'll be happy to answer. I think we'll get together at some point of time over the next,
Absolutely.
maybe before Christmas.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll try to get maybe even more people to come join us. I'll try to find somebody if people want to, because this is the first experience for me.
Yep. Me too.
Making a video with someone So thank you very much. You guys all have a good one.
Cheers.
Take care. Okay, stop streaming.